My son laughed at me when I asked him to teach me how to use online banking and then secretly transferred my money to his mistress's treatment. He thought I wouldn't notice, but he forgot that paper bank statements still exist. If you're ready for this journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this a like so you don't miss the updates. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It's always lovely to see where everyone is. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 67 years old, and for 40 of those years, I was a high school history teacher. I taught generations of kids in my small Ohio town how to think critically, how to look at a set of facts, and see the story hiding underneath. I taught them that history isn't just about dates and long-dead kings. It's about patterns, motivations, and consequences. It turns out that's a pretty useful skill set to have when your own life blows up. My son David is my only child. My late husband Robert and I poured everything into him. He was the golden boy, captain of the football team, summa cum laude in college, and now a successful financial planner with a corner office downtown. He married his college sweetheart, Laura, a lovely girl who deserved the world, and they gave me two beautiful grandchildren, Chloe and Mason. On the surface, we were the perfect family you see on Christmas cards. I was the proud, doting mother and grandmother, living a quiet, comfortable retirement on my teacher's pension and the life insurance Robert left me. The trouble started, as it so often does these days, with technology. Or rather, with David's insistence that I embrace it. "Mom, you have to get with the times," he'd say during our weekly Sunday dinners. "Checks are fossils. You need to be online. It's easier, it's faster, it's better." I'd just smile and pat his hand. "Oh, honey, I'm fine. I like my little checkbook register. I like knowing where my money is." But David is persistent. It's part of what makes him a good financial planner, I suppose. He sees a problem and he wants to implement a solution. His solution. He framed it as a matter of security, of convenience, of me not getting left behind in a world that was moving too fast. He wore me down, and finally, one afternoon, I agreed. He came over with his sleek silver laptop, smelling of expensive cologne and accomplishment. He sat beside me at my oak kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped him with his multiplication tables decades ago. And the condescension began. It was subtle, couched in kindness, but it was there. "Okay, Mom, let's go slow," he said, his voice laced with the exaggerated patience of someone explaining colors to a toddler. "This is the web browser. It's like a door to the internet. We'll type in the bank's address right here." I played the part he assigned me. I squinted at the screen. I asked him what a cursor was. I made him repeat the password instructions 3 times. I saw the flicker of annoyance in his eyes, quickly masked by a sigh and a smile. He thought I was just a silly old woman overwhelmed by a glowing rectangle. He had no idea I'd been using a computer to grade papers and email colleagues since before he was in high school. I wasn't a technological wizard, but I knew my way around. But at that moment, it served me to let him think I was clueless. He set it all up. The username, the password, which he, of course, suggested I write down on a sticky note and hide in my desk drawer, and the security questions. He even downloaded the bank's app onto my phone, showing me how to check my balance with a simple tap. "See? So much easier," he said, beaming, as if he just taught a dog to play chess. "Now you don't have to wait for those silly paper statements to see what's going on." He convinced me to switch to paperless statements too. "It's better for the environment, Mom. Save some trees." I agreed, but a little voice in the back of my head, the history teacher's voice, the one that knows empires fall because of small, overlooked details, told me not to cancel the paper copies just yet. I told him I'd call the bank and cancel them later once I got the hang of things. It was a lie, and thank God for it. He left that day feeling proud of himself, feeling like the dutiful son who was taking care of his technologically inept mother. And me? I felt a chill I couldn't explain. I had just handed over the digital keys to my entire life, to the nest egg Robert and I had worked so hard to build. I trusted my son, of course I did, but I'd learned that trust should always be accompanied by verification. It's how you catch a plagiarized term paper, and it's how you protect your life savings.
Life went on as normal for a few months. I saw David at his family for our Sunday dinners. He'd ask, "How are you getting on with the online banking, Mom?" And I'd say, "Oh, it's still a bit confusing, but I'm getting there." I would log on occasionally just to keep up the pretense, and everything looked fine. My balance was what it should be. The pension check came in, the mortgage payment went out. It was all tidy and digital, just as he'd promised. I was almost convinced he was right. Maybe I was just being a paranoid old lady. And that little old-fashioned habit of mine, the one he teased me about keeping, it was about to blow his perfect little world to pieces. Stick with me, because you'll want to see how this plays out. The bank statement arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between a J. Crew catalog and an ad for a walk-in bathtub. I almost threw it in the recycling bin, remembering I was supposed to be paperless now. But habits are stubborn things. I took my mail to the kitchen table, poured a cup of Earl Grey tea, and slit the envelope open with my letter opener. The silver one Robert had given me for our 20th anniversary. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I just liked to reconcile my checkbook. I scanned the columns of debits and credits. The pension was there, the grocery bills, the electric bill, the small donation to the public library. Everything was in its place. And then I saw it. It was a transfer, not a purchase, for $750. The description read, "E-transfer to J. Preston." I didn't know a J. Preston. I stared at the name, saying it out loud in my empty kitchen. Preston. It sounded foreign. My first thought was that it was a mistake. Banks make mistakes all the time. Or maybe my account had been hacked. A faceless cybercriminal from some faraway country. That seemed much more likely than any other alternative. The next line item was another e-transfer from 2 weeks prior. Same name, J. Preston. This one was for $500. Then another, 2 weeks before that. And another. The numbers varied slightly, but the pattern was undeniable. For the past 3 months, ever since David had so helpfully set up my online banking, money had steadily been siphoning out of my account, a total of over $4,000. My heart started to pound in my chest. This wasn't a bank error. It was systematic. This was theft. My hands trembled as I reached for my laptop, the one David said was so much more efficient than paper. I logged into my bank account, my fingers fumbling with the password he'd set up for me. Online, everything looked pristine. My main checking account page showed the balance, but the detailed transaction list seemed incomplete. The transfers to J. Preston weren't there. It took me a moment to realize what he'd done. On many banking sites, you can customize the view, hiding certain types of transactions from the main summary page. He had set it up so that these specific e-transfers were hidden unless I knew to click on a specific submenu and generate a detailed report. He had built a digital house of cards, assuming I would never have the know-how to look behind the curtain. He assumed I'd never look at the paper. It was cold, calculated, and terrifying. Who was this person? And how did they have access to my account? I spent the rest of the day on the phone with the bank's fraud department. The customer service agent was polite but clinical. She confirmed the transfers were made from my IP address, from my home computer, using the correct password. From the bank's perspective, the transactions were legitimate. They were authorized by me. But I didn't authorize them, I insisted, my voice cracking. Someone did this without my knowledge. She took the report, flagged the account, and promised an investigation. But her tone was doubtful. She probably had me pegged as a confused senior who'd forgotten a payment or had been duped by a phone scammer. The idea that my own son, the financial planner, was the culprit wasn't even breaking the surface of my consciousness. My mind refused to go there. It was a locked room I was too afraid to open. The bank advised me to change my password immediately. As I navigated the site to do so, I had to answer the security questions David had set up. What was the name of your first pet? Buddy? What is your mother's maiden name? Harrington. In what city did you meet your spouse? Columbus. And then I saw the fourth question. There was a fourth one, an optional one he must have added. What is the name of your favorite author?
That stopped me cold. David knew my favorite author was Jane Austen. I'd read Pride and Prejudice to him when he was a boy. But that's not what the answer field hinted at. Most sites will show you the first and last letters of a stored answer. The hint showed J. Eston. It wasn't Austen. My heart sank into my stomach. It was a different name entirely. Preston, maybe? My brain was on fire. I hung up the phone with the bank and just sat in the silence of my house, the setting sun casting long shadows across the floor. David had done this. My David. He had set this all up under the guise of helping me. He had used my trust as a tool to break into my life. The question wasn't how anymore. The question was why. And who in the world was Jay Preston? The first 24 hours after that discovery were a blur of cold shock and hot tears. My beautiful son, the boy I'd rocked to sleep and whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, was a thief. And I was his victim. It felt impossible, like a story happening to someone else. I walked through the rooms of my quiet house, picking up framed photos of him, David at his high school graduation, David cutting his wedding cake with Laura, David holding his newborn daughter Chloe. In every photo, he was smiling. I looked for a sign of the man who could do this, a shadow in his eyes, but I saw nothing, just the son I loved. It was a profound and lonely kind of grief to mourn someone who is still alive. But I am not the kind of woman who wallows. I have survived widowhood. I have navigated the labyrinth of public school bureaucracy for 4 decades, and I have stared down countless surly teenagers who thought they were smarter than me. Crying was a necessary release, but it wasn't a solution. The history teacher in me took over. What do you do when faced with a confusing set of events? You do research. You gather your primary sources. You build a timeline. You find the truth. My investigation started with that security question. J. Eston. Preston. It had to be. My hands were steady now as I sat down at my laptop. David thought this machine was my enemy, but I was about to make it my greatest ally. First, I practiced what the kids called digital hygiene. I cleared the browser history. I logged out of all my accounts. I changed every single password I had, starting with my email and my bank, creating complex combinations of letters, numbers, and symbols that I wrote down in a new notebook I labeled Garden Plans, and hid in my bookshelf between a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt and a thick tome on the fall of the Roman Empire. He would never look there. Then I opened a private browsing window and started to search. J. Preston, Ohio, was a bust. Dozens of names popped up. It was a digital needle in a haystack. I needed to narrow the search. I needed to connect J. Preston to David. My next stop was Facebook. I rarely use it, finding it mostly a confusing stream of baby pictures and political arguments, but I knew it was a web of connections. I typed David's name into the search bar. There he was. David Vance, financial planner at Vance & Associates, loving husband and father. His profile was locked down tighter than Fort Knox, private, only visible to friends. A smart move for a man with secrets. But his wife, Laura, my sweet daughter-in-law, had a public profile. Her page was everything you'd expect. Photos of the kids' soccer games, a happy anniversary posted David last spring, articles about parenting. I scrolled through years of her life, a digital archive of their family's happiness. It made my heart ache. Then I looked at David's public friends list, the handful of contacts visible even on a private profile. And there I got my first hit. He had become friends with a Jessica Preston about 6 months ago. My breath caught in my throat. I clicked on her name. Her profile was public. And there she was, J. Preston, She was young, maybe early 30s, long blonde hair, a bright, toothy smile. She looked vibrant and full of life in most of her photos. There were pictures of her hiking, laughing with girlfriends over cocktails, posing on a beach somewhere tropical. I scrolled through her timeline, and the pictures began to change. Around 4 months ago, her posts became less frequent. The vibrant, smiling woman was replaced by a paler, thinner version. She wore headscarves in a few photos. The bright captions were replaced with inspirational quotes about strength and fighting. I know this part is hard to hear, but it's important. The truth was about to come out, and it was going to be glorious.
The final piece of the puzzle was right at the top of her page, a pinned post from 3 months ago. It was a link to a Caring Bridge page, a website where people can share health journeys and fundraise for medical expenses. The title of the page was Jessica's Journey. I clicked the link, and my son's entire betrayal was laid out before me in meticulous, heartbreaking detail. Jessica Preston, age 32, had been diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of leukemia. Her insurance covered the standard chemotherapy, but her doctors were recommending an experimental immunotherapy treatment. It was promising, her best chance at remission, but it was astronomically expensive, and, of course, not covered by her plan. The fundraising goal was set at $50,000. I scrolled down the list of donors. Most were small amounts, $25 or $50, attached to names and messages of love and support. "Praying for you, Jess. You're the strongest person I know." And then there were the larger donations. $4,000 in the last 3 months, all marked as anonymous. 3 months, the exact time period David had access to my account. The transfers, $750, $500, and all the rest, matched perfectly with the dates of the anonymous donations. He hadn't stolen my money for a fancy car or a secret gambling habit. He'd stolen it for her, for his mistress. I felt a wave of nausea. He was playing the hero for this other woman, funding her last-ditch chance at life with my retirement savings, my money, the money my husband and I had painstakingly saved for our old age. Robert had worked his whole life at the tool and die plant, coming home with grease under his fingernails to make sure I'd be secure after he was gone. And David was giving it away. It was so much worse than I could have imagined. This wasn't just a simple case of infidelity. He was robbing his own mother to fund a life with another woman, all while his perfectly wonderful wife posted loving pictures of him on Facebook. He had woven a tapestry of lies so thick it was suffocating. Sunday dinner was 2 days later. It was the hardest meal of my life. I drove to their beautiful colonial house, the one I'd helped them with the down payment for, and walked in with a smile plastered on my face. "Grandma!" Chloe and Mason yelled, running to hug my legs. I held them tight, breathing in the innocent smell of their shampoo, and felt a fresh stab of anger at my son. This is what he was risking. This beautiful life. Laura gave me a warm hug. "Hi, Eleanor. So glad you could make it. David's just on a work call." I glanced toward his home office, where I could see him through the French doors, pacing back and forth with his phone pressed to his ear, his expression tight and anxious. A work call on a Sunday evening. I knew better. He was probably talking to her or getting an update from the hospital. When he finally came out, he was back in character, all smiles and charm. "Mom, there you are." He gave me a kiss on the cheek that felt like a scorpion sting. "How was your week? Did you figure out how to pay your light bill online yet?" He teased, giving me a wink. I just smiled faintly. "I'm learning, dear, slowly but surely." Throughout dinner, I watched him. He checked his phone constantly, laying it screen down on the table, as if that made it less obvious. Laura would say something to him, and he'd take a second too long to respond, his mind clearly miles away. I saw the flash of hurt in her eyes, the way she'd quickly cover it with a bright smile. She knew something was wrong. She just didn't know what. She probably thought he was just stressed about work. Oh, honey, if you only knew. After dinner, as Laura was clearing the plates, David cornered me in the living room. "David," he said in a low voice, "I might need a little help in the next few months. A business opportunity came up, very promising, but the initial investment is pretty steep. I was thinking of taking out a small loan against your portfolio, just temporarily, of course. I'd pay it all back with interest." I looked him straight in the eye. A loan against my portfolio. He wanted more. The $4,000 he'd stolen was just the beginning. The nerve of him, standing there, lying to my face, asking for more money for his sick girlfriend, all while his perfectly wonderful wife posted loving pictures of him on Facebook. He had woven a tapestry of lives so thick it was suffocating. The old Eleanor, the grieving mother from 2 days ago, would have crumpled, but this was the new Eleanor, the history teacher, the archivist of his crimes. I said, "Let me think about it, David," my voice as calm and steady as a frozen lake. "You know, I always want to help. Just send me the prospectus on the business opportunity, won't you? I like to do my homework."
He looked relieved. He thought he had me. He thought I was his personal ATM, his clueless, endlessly supportive mother. He patted my arm. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." I drove home that night, not with tears in my eyes, but with ice in my veins. He wasn't just a thief. He was a predator. And he was about to discover that his primary source of funding had been officially cut off. And not only that, I was going to make sure he faced the consequences of his actions. Jessica's Caring Bridge page mentioned she was being treated at the Cleveland Clinic, one of the best hospitals in the country, and it said her immunotherapy treatment would be completed in a few weeks, after which she'd be discharged, hopefully on the road to recovery. An idea started to form in my mind, a dark and intricate plan. It was audacious, and it was theatrical, and it was perfect. He wanted a business opportunity? Oh, I was about to give him one, a real lesson in profit and loss. The prospectus David sent over was a joke. It was a sloppily put-together PDF with a generic name, Midwest Real Estate Growth Fund, filled with corporate jargon and vague promises of high returns. It looked like something he'd whipped up in 10 minutes. It was an insult to my intelligence, but it was also a crucial piece of evidence. I printed it out and filed it away in a folder I'd labeled treason. My first move was to protect myself. David had been my financial planner for years. He managed not only his own accounts, but my entire portfolio, the stocks Robert had left me, my IRA, everything. The sickening realization dawned on me that he could do far more damage than just siphoning money from my checking account. He could forge my signature. He could reallocate my assets right into his own pocket, or Jessica Preston's. I made an appointment with a new financial advisor, a woman named Carol, who was recommended by a retired principal I knew. Carol was everything David wasn't: sharp, no nonsense, and meticulously thorough. She wore sensible shoes, and her office wasn't a testament to ego, but to efficiency. I sat in her office, feeling like a spy in my own life. I didn't tell her the whole story. I simply said that I was getting older and wanted to take a more conservative approach to my finances, simplifying things for the future. "I just want everything locked down tight," I told her. Over the next week, Carol and I executed a financial coup. We moved every single asset from the brokerage David controlled to a new one under her management. We instituted a 2-factor authentication for every transaction that required a code to be sent to my cell phone. We put a verbal password on all my accounts, one that only Carol and I knew, the name of my childhood dog, a detail so obscure David would never guess it. We did it all electronically in a blizzard of secure emails and e-signatures. By the end of the week, David was completely and irrevocably locked out of my financial life. He just didn't know it yet.
He still thought Mom's cookie jar was wide open. Next, I needed to know more about the situation with Jessica. I needed to confirm her discharge date. Planning a proper reception requires knowing when the guest of honor will arrive, after all. The following Sunday, I showed up at David and Laura's house for our usual dinner, but I came half an hour early. As I'd hoped, only Laura and the kids were home. David was at the office finishing up some reports. Another lie. "Laura, honey, my old laptop is on its last legs. I can't even get my email to load anymore. Do you think I could possibly use David's computer in the office for just a few minutes? I need to RSVP to a luncheon for the Historical Society, and my phone screen is just too small for these old eyes." Laura, bless her trusting heart, waved me right in. "Of course, Eleanor. Make yourself at home. The password is Chillian Mason, 1. My son, the master of deception, used his own children's names as his last word. The irony was thicker than molasses. I sat down in his expensive leather chair, the scent of his cologne still lingering in the air. The screen sprang to life, and I felt a jolt of adrenaline. I had maybe 15, 20 minutes at most. I had to be fast. I ignored my email story and went straight to his web browser. I prayed he wasn't diligent about clearing his history. Most arrogant people aren't. They don't think they'll ever get caught. And sure enough, he wasn't. There it was, his entire digital life, a history of his betrayal. Clicks on the Caring Bridge site, visits to the Cleveland Clinic's oncology patient portal, searches for jewelry stores, Tiffany & Co. The nerve! He'd even logged into his own bank account. A small part of me hoped I would see that he had been contributing his own money to Jessica's fund as well. It wouldn't excuse him, but it would show some small measure of personal sacrifice. The transaction history showed me the opposite. I saw extravagant dinners at fancy restaurants, a charge from a high-end hotel in downtown Cleveland near the hospital, and several payments to a florist. He wasn't just supporting her, he was courting her, building a new life on the ashes of his old one. He was about to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Don't go anywhere. My real target was the patient portal for the clinic. He'd foolishly clicked the Remember Me box, so the login information was saved. Her username was her email address. The password was hidden behind black dots, but who needs a password when the computer remembers it for you? One click, and I was in. I was looking at Jessica Preston's private medical information. I know it was a staggering invasion of her privacy, and I'm not proud of it, but David had made her a part of my life when he started stealing my money for her, and I felt I had a right to the information I needed to protect my family. There it was, on her chart. Doctor's notes, lab results, and, most importantly, her treatment schedule. Her last round of immunotherapy was scheduled for Thursday of the following week. A note from her oncologist read, "Patient responding well to treatment. Barring any complications, we anticipate discharge on Friday, October 24th, around 11 a.m. Bingo! I had the time and the place. I quickly logged out, cleared the browser history of my little reconnaissance mission, and then, for good measure, I actually logged into my email and sent the RSVP to the Historical Society. When David walked through the door 10 minutes later, I was just closing the browser. "Mom, what are you doing in here?" he asked, a flash of panic in his eyes. "Oh, hello, dear," I said, smiling sweetly. "Laura was kind enough to let me use your computer. My old clunker at home has finally given up the ghost. I just had to send one quick email." He relaxed, the tension leaving his shoulders. I was just his clueless old mom, harmlessly pecking at a keyboard. "You should buy me a new one," he said, magnanimously. "Oh, that's all right, honey. I think I'm just about done with all this technology. It's more trouble than it's worth." We had our dinner. David was more attentive than usual, probably because he was anticipating that loan from my portfolio. He talked about a family vacation he wanted to take in the spring, to Disney World. He looked at Laura and the kids as he said it, painting himself as the perfect family man. The hypocrisy was nauseating. He was planning a trip with the family he was actively destroying.
After dinner, as I was getting ready to leave, he walked me to my car. So, Mom, have you had a chance to look at that proposal? The opportunity won't be on the table for long. I've given it some thought, David, I said, pausing with my hand on the car door. I looked up at the handsome face of my son, the boy I loved more than life itself, and felt a strange mix of pity and fury. I think it's a wonderful idea. Why don't you and I meet for lunch next week? We can go to the bank together and get it all sorted out. His face lit up like a Christmas tree. That's great, Mom, really great. How about Friday? My heart gave a little leap. Friday sounds perfect, I said. Let's say noon? That gives me time to run a few errands in the morning. He had no idea what kind of errand I would be running. October 24th. It was going to be a memorable day for both of us. The stage was set, the actors were in place, and the curtain was about to rise on the final act of his carefully constructed double life. I just had to make one more phone call to set the wheels in motion. A call to my unsuspecting daughter-in-law, Laura. Laura, honey, it's Eleanor. I made the call on Thursday afternoon, the day before the grand finale. I pitched my voice to sound slightly frail, a little shaky. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I need to ask you a huge favor. My car is making the most dreadful noise, and the mechanic can't even look at it until next week. I have a very important doctor's appointment tomorrow morning in Cleveland, and I have no way to get there. David's taking me to lunch, but that's not until noon. Laura, predictably, was an angel. Oh, Eleanor, of course! Don't even worry about it. What time is your appointment? I can take the kids to school and come pick you up. It's no trouble at all. Oh, you're a lifesaver, I sighed, letting a wave of relief flow into my voice. The appointment is at the Cleveland Clinic at 10, but could you possibly pick me up around 9:30? You know how I like to be early for these things, and we need to find parking. And honey, would you mind terribly if the children came along? It's just a routine follow-up, and I'd love to take them out for ice cream afterward to thank you. The kids would love that. We'll make it a little adventure, she said, her voice warm and kind. She had no idea. Friday morning, I dressed with the care of a general preparing for a decisive battle. I chose a classic navy blue dress, a string of pearls Robert had given me, and sensible heels. I looked respectable, dependable, the kind of grandmother you believe without question. When Laura and the children picked me up, I had a small, elegant handbag on my lap. Tucked inside were two things: the printouts of the fraudulent prospectus David had sent me, and the original paper bank statement that had started it all, my primary sources. The drive to Cleveland was filled with the sweet, innocent chatter of my grandchildren. Chloe was telling me about her art project, and Mason was showing me his new toy dinosaur. I listened, I laughed, I answered their questions, all while a quiet storm of adrenaline and dread brewed in my gut. Laura was a kind and careful driver, occasionally glancing over at me with concern. Are you feeling all right, Eleanor? You seem a little tense. Just doctor's jitters, dear, I lied smoothly. You know how I dislike hospitals. When we arrived at the sprawling campus of the Cleveland Clinic, I directed her. We'll want to park in the C building garage, honey. It's closest to the cancer center entrance. The cancer center? She asked, a flicker of real alarm in her eyes. Eleanor, you didn't tell me, is everything okay? I reached over and patted her hand. Everything is going to be just fine, I said, my voice gentle but firm. Just trust me. Park right here. We're going to meet someone. We walked into the main lobby of the Tausig Cancer Center. It was bright and airy, filled with art and natural light, but there was an underlying hum of anxiety and whispered conversations. It was just before 11 o'clock. Perfect timing. I steered our little group toward a waiting area with a clear view of the discharge doors. Grandma, why are we stopping? Chloe asked. We're waiting for a friend of your daddy's. It's a surprise. Laura was looking at me, her brow furrowed in confusion, but she didn't protest.
My grandchildren, bless their hearts, just settled in to play with their toys on the floor. And then, at 11:05, the doors swished open, and there they were. David was pushing a wheelchair. In it sat Jessica Preston. She was pale and thin, but she was smiling, her face turned up toward my son. She was wearing a new dress, a soft-looking cashmere wrap draped over her shoulders, a get-well present from a generous, anonymous donor, I presumed. They looked like a couple, a sick woman and her devoted partner, ready to start a new chapter. David was so focused on her, so caught up in his moment of triumph. He'd saved her. He was the hero. That he didn't see us at first. He wheeled her right into the center of the lobby. That's when Laura saw them. I didn't have to say a word. I just watched her face. The confusion curdled into disbelief, and then into the sickening, gut-wrenching dawn of comprehension. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she made a small, choked sound. David heard it. His head snapped up. His eyes scanned the lobby and locked with hers. The color drained from his face. For a single, frozen moment, nobody moved. It was a perfect tableau of his two lives colliding in a hospital lobby. His doting wife and beautiful children on one side, his sick, adoring mistress on the other, and me, the architect of his reckoning, standing right in the middle. "Daddy?" Chloe said, her small voice breaking the spell. She started to run toward him. That's what finally broke him. David froze like a deer in headlights, his hands still on the handles of the wheelchair. Jessica looked back and forth between David and Laura, her happy smile dissolving into a mask of confusion. "David," Laura whispered, her voice trembling with a fury I had never heard from her before. "What is this? Who is this?" David started to stammer. "Laura, what are you doing here? Mom, this isn't..." "She's a client's daughter. I was just helping her out." That was when I stepped forward. "A client?" I said, my voice ringing with a clarity and strength that surprised even me. "That's funny, David, because according to this..." I pulled the bank statement from my purse. "Her name is Jessica Preston. And for the last 3 months, you've been transferring thousands of dollars of my retirement money into her account." I handed the statement to Laura. Her eyes scanned the page, her face a mixture of grief and rage. "And a client's daughter?" I continued, turning my attention to the pale, stunned woman in the wheelchair. "Jessica, my dear, I am so sorry to have to do this here. But my son, David Vance, has not only been cheating on his wife and children with you, he has been funding your medical treatments by stealing from his widowed mother." I then took out the fake prospectus. He was about to ask for a loan against my portfolio for this business opportunity. "The money was for you, Jessica. All of it." Jessica stared at David, her mouth hanging open. He was sputtering, shaking his head, trying to form a sentence that could somehow explain the inexplicable. But there was no explanation. There was only the ugly truth laid bare on the polished floors of the cancer center lobby. She told me it was an investment windfall," she whispered, her voice raspy. "Laura, honey, kids, let's go," I said gently, taking my daughter-in-law's arm. "Let's leave David to his business opportunity." Laura, who seemed to have turned to stone, finally moved. She grabbed Mason's hand, her face a mask of cold fury. She didn't look back at her husband. She didn't say another word. She just walked out. I was the last to leave. I turned back for one final look. David was standing alone, trapped between the woman whose life he'd saved with stolen money and the family whose lives he had just utterly destroyed. He looked small, pathetic. He had lost everything, in a public and humiliating spectacle of his own making. In the end, Laura filed for divorce, of course. She used the bank statement and the prospectus in the proceedings, and David's infidelity was on public full display. The judge was not sympathetic. She got the house, full custody of the children, and a significant portion of his income. His reputation as a trustworthy financial planner was shredded. He lost his corner office, and eventually his business. I hear he's working out of a sad little office in a strip mall on the other side of town now. As for Jessica,
I don't know what became of her. Once the money dried up, I imagine the investment windfall lost its appeal. I haven't spoken to David since that day. He has tried to call, has sent letters filled with apologies and excuses, but I cannot bring myself to respond. Forgiveness might come someday, but trust? Trust is a historical artifact, and once it's shattered, you can never truly piece it back together. My life is quiet now, but it's my own. I have a wonderful relationship with Laura and my grandchildren. We have Sunday dinners at my house now, and they are filled with laughter and love. My finances are secure under Carol's watchful eye. I got a new laptop and, ironically, I'm now quite proficient at online banking. But every month, I still get the paper statement. It's a reminder that sometimes the old ways are best, a reminder that no matter how smart someone thinks they are, they should never, ever underestimate a retired history teacher. Thank you for joining me on this journey. It wasn't an easy story to tell, but it was mine. What would you do in my place? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video. Bye bye!